Welcome back to the deep dive. We're diving into the world of Indian polity today, and we've got excerpts from Indian Polity for Civil Services and other examinations.
Oh, that's a fantastic resource for understanding how India's democracy actually works.
It seems like a really solid foundation for this deep dive.
Yeah, and I'm particularly fascinated by how India balances a strong central government with room for diverse states.
Oh, and even local governance.
Right, exactly. That's something we can trace all the way from British rule to today.
It's like this constant push and pull between unity and regional identity.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm already seeing that tension in these excerpts. You've given us this timeline of acts shaping the political landscape, starting way back with the Charter Acts of 1813 and 1833.
Right, well, those early acts are so important because they show the shift in power from the East India Company to the British Crown.
Oh, so it's the beginning of the road toward India's independence in 1947.
It is. But we can't forget about the Government of India Act of 1935.
Right.
A lot of its features are echoed in India's current constitution.
It's amazing how those historical threads connect.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Constitution, you highlighted the formation of the Constituent Assembly in 1946.
Yeah.
And its prominent figures like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar.
Oh, right. Often called the father of the Constitution.
Exactly. That table showing community-wise representation in the Assembly really struck me.
It really shows their commitment to inclusivity right from the start.
Yeah.
But the Assembly's composition and the debates that took place, they highlight how complex it is to shape a nation's identity.
Especially one as diverse as India.
Exactly. There's been criticism that the Indian Constitution is just borrowed,
Oh, right.
so we should examine those influences.
Yeah, and how they were adapted to the Indian context.
That's definitely.
It's like taking inspiration from a recipe but adding your own spices to make something new.
Hmm.
Okay, let's zoom in on those core institutions now.
Sure.
You've provided sections on the president, prime minister, parliament, and Supreme Court. The president's power to grant pardons and the pleasure of the president really caught my eye.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds incredibly powerful.
It does, but it's important to understand that the Indian president's role is largely ceremonial.
Oh, okay.
It's not like a presidential system like the United States.
Right.
The real executive power is with the prime minister and the council of ministers.
Okay.
And they answer to the Lok Sabha.
The lower house of parliament.
Exactly. This is where the concept of collective responsibility comes in.
So they stand or fall together.
Exactly.
So it's a delicate dance of power with checks and balances woven in.
It is.
Speaking of checks and balances, you highlighted India's federal system with a unitary bias.
Right.
It's this unique aspect where the central government can essentially take over state functions during emergencies.
Yes.
That seems like a major shift in the power dynamic.
It definitely is. That tension between federalism and central authority is a key theme in Indian polity.
Nice.
While the Constitution defines powers, it also gives the center tools to ensure national unity and stability. We should discuss the different types of emergencies,
Oh, yeah. How are they declared?
how they're declared, and the debates surrounding their use.
Okay.
There are three types: national emergencies due to war or armed rebellion, state emergencies, also known as president's rule, invoked when a state's government fails,
Right.
and financial emergencies when India's financial stability is threatened.
Okay.
Each one has specific triggers and implications for the balance of power.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. Let's break down these emergency provisions.
Okay.
What triggers a national emergency, and how does it impact the relationship between the central government and the states?
Well, a national emergency can be declared by the President of India if they are satisfied that India's security is threatened by war, external aggression, or armed rebellion.
Okay.
When a national emergency is in effect, the federal structure of the country undergoes a significant shift.
I see.
The central government assumes greater powers.
Okay.
Many powers of the states are transferred to the center.
For instance?
For instance, the parliament gains the power to make laws on subjects that are normally under the exclusive jurisdiction of state legislatures.
So, in a national emergency, the lines between the central government and state powers become blurred.
Yeah.
What about state emergencies or president's rule?
Right.
What are the grounds for invoking this?
Okay, so president's rule under Article 356 of the Constitution is a controversial provision. It allows the central government to take control of a state's administration if it believes that the state government is unable to function according to the Constitution.
Okay.
This can be due to various reasons,
Such as?
including political instability, breakdown of law and order, or a failure to follow constitutional directives.
Given the potential for president's rule to disrupt the balance of power between the center and the states, it's not surprising that it's been a subject of much debate.
You're absolutely right.
Are there any checks on this power?
Well, the imposition of president's rule has frequently sparked controversy.
Right.
Critics argue that it has been used on occasions to topple opposition-led state governments. It's been a point of contention in Indian politics, and there have been calls for greater safeguards to prevent its misuse.
So it seems like even within these provisions designed for national unity and stability, there's this inherent tension between central power and state autonomy.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that a democracy is constantly evolving, navigating these complexities, and striving for balance.
Yeah, and that's what makes Indian polity so fascinating to study. These tensions and the constant evolution create a dynamic system that reflects the realities of a diverse and evolving nation.
Right.
But let's not forget about the institutions that ensure accountability.
Oh, right.
The material you've included on the Comptroller and Auditor General and the National Human Rights Commission stood out to me.
Yes, let's dive into those.
Sure.
The CAG is often described as a financial watchdog. Can you break down what they do and why their role is so crucial in a system like India's?
Well, the CAG, appointed by the president but accountable to Parliament, is tasked with auditing the accounts of the central and state governments,
Okay.
as well as government-owned entities.
Right.
Their job is to ensure that public funds are being used responsibly, efficiently, and in accordance with regulations.
So they're not just number crunchers, they're digging deep to see if government programs and projects are truly delivering value for money.
Exactly.
What happens when they find irregularities or instances of misuse?
Well, the CAG has the authority to investigate and report on any financial irregularities they uncover during their audits. Their findings and recommendations are compiled into reports that are presented to Parliament,
Okay.
making their work public and holding the executive branch accountable for its financial management.
It's fascinating how this one institution plays such a crucial role in ensuring transparency and holding those in power accountable for their actions. It's like having an independent referee in the financial arena of government.
Precisely. And then you have the National Human Rights Commission,
Right.
which acts as a safeguard for the fundamental rights of citizens,
Okay.
especially those who are vulnerable or marginalized.
So they investigate complaints of human rights violations.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Promote awareness about human rights and recommend measures to the government to ensure effective protection.
So the NHRC steps in when the system fails to protect the rights of its citizens.
Yes.
Especially those who may lack the resources or influence to seek justice on their own.
Exactly. Their role is crucial in ensuring that the principles of human dignity and justice are upheld, regardless of an individual's social standing or background.
It seems like these two institutions, the CAG and the NHRC, play complementary roles in Indian polity.
Yeah.
One safeguarding the financial integrity of the system, and the other safeguarding the rights of individuals within that system.
Exactly. Their functions might seem distinct, but they both contribute to good governance, ensuring that power is exercised responsibly and that citizens are protected from abuse or exploitation.
It's fascinating how these seemingly behind-the-scenes institutions are actually so central to the functioning of Indian polity.
Yes.
It's a reminder that a democracy is built not just on high-minded principles, but also on the dedicated work of those who uphold those principles in practice.
Exactly.
But before we delve deeper into the specific functions of these institutions, let's take a step back.
Okay.
And explore the evolution of the Indian Constitution itself.
Sure.
It's a document that's been amended over 100 times since its adoption in 1950.
You're right. The Indian Constitution is a living document, constantly evolving to reflect the changing needs and aspirations of the nation.
Right.
And that brings us to the concept of the basic structure doctrine,
Okay.
which places limitations on the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution.
Now, this is where things get interesting. The idea that even the Parliament, the supreme legislative body, doesn't have absolute power to change the Constitution is a profound one. What's the reasoning behind this doctrine, and how does it impact the evolution of Indian polity?
The basic structure doctrine emerged from a landmark Supreme Court judgment in the Kesavananda Faradi case of 1973.
Okay.
The court held that while Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution, it cannot alter its basic structure.
I see.
This means that certain fundamental features of the Constitution, such as its democratic and secular nature,
Mm-hmm.
are considered unamendable,
Even by Parliament.
even by Parliament.
So it's like having a set of core principles, almost like the DNA of the Indian Constitution,
Right.
that are protected from any drastic alterations. Yeah. How did this doctrine come about?
Well, this doctrine was established by the Supreme Court in response to concerns that unlimited amending power could potentially lead to the erosion of the Constitution's fundamental principles.
So it was a way to safeguard the core values of Indian democracy
Exactly.
and ensure that any changes to the Constitution remain within the bounds of those values.
Yes.
The basic structure doctrine is a powerful concept.
Yes.
It highlights the delicate balance between the need for flexibility to adapt to changing times and the need to preserve the core values that underpin the system itself.
Yeah.
It's this tension that makes the study of Indian polity so fascinating.
Absolutely. And this tension is woven throughout the fabric of Indian polity, from the relationship between the central government and the states to the role of institutions like the CAG and the NHRC.
Right.
But let's delve further into how the basic structure doctrine impacts the interpretation of the Constitution
Okay.
and the evolution of Indian law.
This basic structure doctrine, it's like a safety net, ensuring that the core values of the Indian Constitution remain intact.
Exactly.
It's amazing how the judiciary plays such a pivotal role, shaping the interpretation of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And ultimately the direction of Indian democracy. But let's shift our focus now.
Sure.
India's diversity isn't just about its people, it's also woven into the fabric of its governance. We've talked about the overall framework,
Right.
but you've brought in material about scheduled and tribal areas,
Yes.
regions that need a more tailored approach.
It's essential to remember that India isn't a monolithic entity.
Right.
The Constitution acknowledges this by providing specific safeguards for scheduled and tribal areas,
Okay.
primarily inhabited by communities with unique cultural and socioeconomic vulnerabilities.
I see.
These communities, often referred to as scheduled tribes,
Right.
they've historically faced marginalization and exploitation.
Right.
The Constitution seeks to protect their interests and promote their development.
It's like recognizing that a one-size-fits-all approach to governance doesn't work in a country as diverse as India.
Exactly.
So what are some of the specific provisions that address the needs of scheduled and tribal areas?
Okay, so there are two key constitutional provisions, the Fifth and Sixth Schedules.
All right.
The Fifth Schedule deals with the administration and control of scheduled areas and scheduled tribes in most Indian states.
I see.
It empowers the president to declare an area scheduled and to create regulations for its governance, ensuring peace and good administration. These regulations can cover various aspects, including land ownership, resource management, and the functioning of local self-governance institutions.
And what about the Sixth Schedule? You mentioned that it applies to certain specific states.
Yeah.
What makes it different from the Fifth Schedule?
The Sixth Schedule applies to the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram,
Okay.
as well as to certain designated areas in other states.
Okay.
It's unique because it provides for the creation of autonomous districts and autonomous regions, granting a higher degree of self-governance to tribal communities in these areas.
That sounds like a significant level of autonomy. What powers do these autonomous districts and regions have? How do they function within the larger framework of Indian polity?
Under the Sixth Schedule, these autonomous districts and regions have their own district councils and regional councils.
Okay.
These councils have legislative, executive, and judicial powers over specific subjects. They can enact laws, manage resources, administer justice, and even collect taxes.
Wow.
It's a recognition of the distinct cultural and political identities of these communities,
Right.
and an attempt to empower them to govern themselves according to their own traditions and customs.
It's a remarkable attempt to balance national integration with the preservation of cultural diversity and self-determination.
Yeah.
But how has it worked in practice? Has the Sixth Schedule been successful in achieving its goals of protecting tribal interests and promoting development in these areas?
The implementation of both the Fifth and Sixth Schedules has been a complex process.
I see.
With its share of successes and challenges.
Right.
While these provisions have provided a framework for protecting tribal rights and promoting development, the actual impact on the ground has varied.
Okay.
Issues like land encroachment, resource depletion, inadequate representation of tribal voices in decision-making processes,
Right.
and limited access to education and healthcare
Yeah.
continue to pose significant challenges.
So it's clear that constitutional provisions alone aren't enough, what else is needed to ensure that the rights and aspirations of tribal communities are truly realized?
Effective implementation of these constitutional safeguards requires a multi-pronged approach. It involves sustained political will,
Okay.
sensitive and culturally aware governance,
Uh-huh.
meaningful participation of tribal communities in decision-making processes,
Right.
and targeted investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure development.
Okay.
Addressing the historical disadvantages faced by these communities is essential
Yeah.
for achieving genuine equality and inclusivity.
It's a reminder that building a just and equitable society requires more than just laws on paper. It requires a commitment to translating those laws into tangible improvements in the lives of people,
Yeah.
particularly those who have been marginalized or excluded. But let's shift gears now and delve into another crucial aspect of Indian polity, the electoral system.
Sure.
It's through elections that the will of the people is translated into political power.
You're absolutely right. India's electoral system is the foundation of its democracy.
Yeah.
With hundreds of millions of voters participating in regular elections, it's the world's largest democratic exercise.
That's mind-boggling.
It is.
It must be a massive undertaking to organize and conduct elections on such a scale. So how does it all work? What are the key features of the Indian electoral system?
India follows a first-past-the-post electoral system for its parliamentary elections.
Okay.
This means that in each constituency, the candidate who receives the most votes wins,
Right.
even if they don't secure a majority of the total votes cast. This system has its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
It's relatively simple to understand and administer,
Right.
but it can also result in situations where a candidate wins with a plurality of votes,
Uh-huh.
even though a majority of voters might have preferred other candidates.
Yep. So it prioritizes simplicity and clear outcomes,
Yeah,
but it doesn't always perfectly reflect the nuanced preferences of the electorate.
it doesn't.
What about the body that oversees all of this? You've mentioned the Election Commission of India.
Right.
What's their role, and how do they ensure that elections are conducted fairly and transparently?
The Election Commission of India is a powerful and independent constitutional body, entrusted with the responsibility of conducting free and fair elections.
I see.
They have a wide range of powers and responsibilities, including delimiting constituencies,
Right.
registering political parties,
Uh-huh.
enforcing the model code of conduct during elections,
Okay.
and overseeing the entire polling process to ensure its integrity. Their independence is paramount to ensure that elections are conducted without bias or undue influence.
It sounds like they have a huge responsibility. Are there any mechanisms in place to ensure that the Election Commission itself is accountable and transparent in its functioning?
The Election Commission's independence is protected by the Constitution,
Okay.
which gives it significant autonomy from the executive and legislative branches of government.
I see.
Their decisions are subject to judicial review by the courts, ensuring that they act within the bounds of the law and the Constitution.
So it's like a system within a system.
It is.
Checks and balances operating at every level to ensure fairness, accountability, and ultimately the integrity of the democratic process. It's fascinating how these interconnected layers work together to create a robust framework for governance. But we're not done yet.
No, we're not.
There's more to explore, especially when it comes to the institutions that ensure accountability and protect the rights of citizens.
You're right. We've covered the historical evolution of the Indian government, the
Right.
intricate workings of its constitution, the delicate balance of power between the center and the states,
Right.
and the crucial role of the Election Commission.
Yeah.
But we still need to delve deeper into the functions of the Comptroller and Auditor General and the National Human Rights Commission.
Absolutely. Let's take a closer look at how these institutions,
Right.
often working behind the scenes, play a critical role in shaping the landscape of Indian polity.
We'll start by exploring the intricacies of the CAG's role in ensuring financial accountability within the government. Their work might not always make headlines,
Right.
but it's crucial for the proper functioning of a democracy.
We're back, ready to shine a light on these behind-the-scenes players in Indian polity. You prepped us with some material on the CAG.
Right, the Comptroller and Auditor General.
Exactly what struck you most about this institution?
What's fascinating is their reach.
Yeah.
They audit not just the central government, but state governments and even government-owned entities.
Right.
It's about ensuring that public funds are used responsibly and efficiently across the board.
They're like the financial detectives of the Indian government.
Yeah.
But their role goes beyond just checking if the numbers add up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The CAG doesn't just look at whether the government stayed within its budget.
Right.
They assess the value for money. Are taxpayer rupees actually achieving their intended objectives?
Okay.
Are there inefficiencies or worse, corruption?
Right.
It's about holding the government accountable for how they spend.
So it's not just about legality, but effectiveness, too.
Exactly.
Can you give us a real-world example of how a CAG audit has led to real change?
Well, there have been numerous instances where the CAG's reports have uncovered major scams, wasteful expenditures,
right.
or even flawed policies. Their findings are presented to Parliament, which can then initiate further investigations or demand corrective actions from the government.
It's a powerful check on the executive branch, ensuring that they're not just spending money, but spending it wisely.
Yes.
Now, let's turn our attention to the National Human Rights Commission, the NHRC.
Sure.
What's their place in this complex web of Indian polity?
The NHRC is like a guardian, particularly for the vulnerable and marginalized. They investigate complaints of human rights violations, everything from custodial deaths to discrimination against minorities, even the rights of women and children.
So when the system fails to protect individuals, the NHRC steps in.
Exactly.
It's a crucial safeguard, especially in a country as vast and diverse as India.
It is.
But how effective are they in actually bringing about change?
While the NHRC doesn't have the power to prosecute, their investigations and recommendations carry significant weight. They can shine a spotlight on systemic issues, advocate for legal and policy reforms, and even provide compensation to victims.
It's inspiring to see how these institutions, the CAG and the NHRC, play such crucial roles in upholding the values of accountability and justice. It's a reminder that a democracy is more than just elections.
Definitely.
It's about having mechanisms that ensure good governance and protect the rights of all citizens.
And it's a testament to the framers of the Indian Constitution that they recognize the need for such institutions. They understood that power, even in a democracy, needs to be constantly checked and balanced.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Indian polity, it's clear that this is a system that embraces complexity.
It does.
It's a delicate balance of central authority and state autonomy, a blend of historical legacies and modern aspirations.
What's truly remarkable is how this system, despite its inherent tensions and challenges, has managed to function and evolve for over 7 decades.
Right.
It's a testament to the resilience of Indian democracy and its ability to adapt to changing times.
This deep dive has only scratched the surface.
It has.
But it's given you a solid framework for understanding how India governs itself. We encourage you to continue exploring, read the Constitution, delve into the debates, and consider how this system compares to others around the world.
And never stop questioning. Analyzing and engaging with the complexities of Indian polity. It's a system that impacts the lives of over 1 billion people. And understanding its nuances is crucial for informed citizenship and meaningful participation in shaping India's future.